Hey everyone, I'm Wendy McSwain, and welcome to A Real Life Moment. This is a podcast series by Real Life Church to offer you some encouragement. We talk through our sermon series or maybe just share some advice with you. Today we have Clint, our executive pastor, and we're going to talk about your message from last weekend at Real Life Church, dealing with discouragement. It doesn't sound like the most happy thing to talk about, but it was a really good message, and our people really connected with it, so we wanted to go a little bit deeper in that. How are you today, Clint?
I'm discouraged. No, I'm really not. Today's so far so good. I feel what you're saying about discouragement. And when Mike came to me 6-8 weeks ago and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna be out of town on this weekend. Do you want to speak?" And I always try and think about, what is it that people need to hear? And I think about people in my life and people that I know and what are they going through and what, word from Scripture that can be encouraging or teach on just to help them, deal with whatever it is they're going through. And I know a lot of people are just going through some heavy stuff. Mm-hmm. And it can be very overwhelming and very discouraging. And so that kind of pushed me in that direction in, looking, all right, God, what do you want me to say, out of your word pertaining to discouragement? And so, that led me to Elijah. And we all know, maybe some of Elijah's story, this little bit or that little bit. But he's a fascinating character. If you don't know a whole lot about Elijah, go back and read 1 Kings, about chapter 17, all the way through the beginning of 2 Kings, and just read about Elijah's life. A pretty unique individual and how God used him. And so, but even though he was used by God in a mighty way, he faced discouragement too. And so I think that's why it's helpful sometimes to look at people in the Bible who go through hard times, because a lot of times we think, well, mm-hmm. whether it's the original, disciples or even Jesus, that they had it made and everything always went their way, and it didn't. I mean, they faced discouragement just like everybody else. So. Yeah,
I think that's good. And like you said, people are going through horrible, hard things. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to be discouraged then, but it's also easy to be discouraged just in everyday life. Mm-hmm. I mean, a few weeks ago, I really felt discouraged. Mm-hmm. I felt like that certain things in my life weren't ever going to change, and mm-hmm. that, help. And, that was kind of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go forward with this. And when you feel like you're either not going to get the help you need or mm-hmm. It's never going to change, you can really get discouraged. So when this came up, I thought, I definitely can use this message.
Well, good. But you're right. It doesn't always have to be big things. It can be big things, but a lot of times it can just be little things.
Normal life.
But, usually it seems like it's a lot of little things in a row, or it's one thing that you just can't seem to get over the hump or get ahead of, and all those things can bring discouragement into our life. And so that's why we need to learn how to deal with discouragement appropriately, the way God tells us to, so that we don't get stuck and we don't get in a rut that we can't get out of, and it doesn't have a negative impact on our life, really giving it more power than it should have.
Yeah, that's good. I liked how you said in the message that discouragement is not sin. Everybody's going to feel that way. It's not mm-hmm. a sin for you to feel that way, but it can lead to sin. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about if you don't handle discouragement in the right way, what could that be? Yeah,
and again, I think it's common to everybody when we're facing discouragement. At first we may just be kind of frustrated and kind of down, and I think those are natural human responses when frustration comes. But if we don't deal with it at that point, if we just kind of dwell on it and we keep thinking about it, and then our mind starts to wander, and we begin to get looking for somebody to lash out at, to blame for my discouragement, to blame for how I'm feeling. And so, that's not productive. Now we're just looking to blame somebody else for the situation, that we're in. And all those things can lead to sin as far as how we're treating other people, whether it's their fault or not. We like to find somebody who's
somebody
to
other
blame.
Than me.
It's their fault that I'm feeling this way.
Yes.
And so, even little things like that, it can lead to us not treating other people the way that we should.
Right. Yeah. So Elijah, when he was discouraged, he had this big triumph, and that was, so go back and read that. That's a really interesting story. I mean, it's a huge thing. It was just him against 450 prophets, and God delivered. But then, and almost immediately, like the next day, I don't know how that time actually played out. He was sitting under a tree wanting to die.
Yeah. And we look at that and we read that and we think, how could that happen?
Right.
We can look at those situations, just kind of shake our head. How could Elijah do that after seeing this huge spiritual victory, after seeing God move in such a mighty way? How could he be running scared and saying, God, just kill me now because I don't have the strength to do it? And because he's human.
Yeah.
and we do a lot of the same things, whether it's we've seen God move in a mighty way and boy, we're just, feel really close to God, have seen God move. And then the least little thing can happen, and it knocks us off, and we get frustrated, and we get discouraged, and we quickly forget who God is and what God has just done. And to me, that's a huge key, is when our focus begins to shift from God and who He is to our surrounding circumstances. And I always think of Peter when he was in the boat and Jesus called him to walk on water, and all right, this is pretty huge deal, this is pretty big, and Peter had the faith to do it, and as long as he kept his focus on Jesus, he was fine. He could walk on the water. But as soon as he took his focus off of Jesus and he began to look around at how big the waves were and the wind and everything else, what happened to Peter?
He sunk.
He began to sink. So he took his focus off of where it needed to be and put it on his circumstances surrounding him, and that's when he began to sink. And I think that's what happens to us a lot of times. We can shift our focus from who God is and God's provision and God's guidance to just the circumstances around us. And when we do that, when our focus begins to waver, our faith begins to waver, and we begin to sink. Just like Peter.
Yeah, that's sinking. That's how it feels.
Yeah.
When you're getting covered up by discouragement. So we kind of looked at when you don't handle it the right way. So how do we handle discouragement in the right way? How do we, I think you said grow through it, because you're going to go through it. Like you don't get to jump over it.
Yeah.
But how can we kind of come out of that in the right direction?
Yeah. And I think, part of it, we know in our mind everybody faces discouragement, but sometimes, particularly for us as believers, if we feel like we're serving God, we feel like we're doing the right things, we're doing everything that we need to do and that we should do, for some reason we're shocked when something goes wrong, and we think, God, what's happening? I'm trying to serve you. I'm doing this and this and this and this. So why is this happening? And I don't know if it's human nature or what, but it kind of catches us by surprise, and we forget. Discouragement happens to everybody. And so I think the first part for me is just to accept discouragement's going to come. Right. So when it comes, when things go wrong, it's not a matter of if they go wrong, but when things go wrong, don't be caught off guard by it. Don't be surprised by it. You don't have to enjoy it.
Right.
But just know, okay, well, how do we need to deal with this? You just kind of accept it. So I think that's the first part, is just knowing that difficulty is going to come in life, because that's life. Yeah. There's a verse I referenced on Sunday out of Matthew 5 where Jesus says, it rains on the just and the unjust. God sends his sunlight on the good and the evil. And so we're all going to experience that sunlight and that rain, no matter who we are in our life. So I think just accepting that, difficult times are going to come, discouragement's going to come, that's a good first step. But beyond that, I know too many times a lot of us will carry those burdens with us, and those are something that we need to release to God, whether it's a family issue or whether it's a relationship or something, something that is out of my control. Especially those things, we like to have in our control.
Right.
So those things that are out of our control, simply releasing them to God and saying, God, I don't know how you're going to handle this, but I'm going to trust you with it. So you just show me what I need to do, but I'm going to let you carry it. Because a lot of us, we like to carry, I don't know, like to carry those burdens, but we do carry those burdens.
We hold on to them.
Unnecessarily. And that's the thing. Just like Elijah, he felt like the weight of the nation of Israel was on his shoulders.
I'm the only one.
And it wasn't. It's God's people. It's not Elijah's people. And so the weight for the nation of Israel was on God and not on Elijah. But Elijah felt like it's all up to me. And if I fail, there goes, God's people. So I think, accepting that discouragement's going to come, being willing to take those burdens and hand them over to God. And then part of it we mentioned Sunday was just to persevere.
Right. Wow.
Sometimes it's, I shared with one of my daughters what I was preaching on Sunday, and this is just kind of her attitude about everything, is you just need to tell them to suck it up and get on with it. And I thought, well, yes, but there's some other things to that. But honestly, sometimes that's just it.
Yeah.
We just got to quit feeling sorry for ourselves. And all right, I got knocked down. We'll get back up, and let's just keep moving forward. And so that's part of that persevering. And the last part is just to continue to pursue God.
Yeah.
And because again, that goes back to that focus thing. If my focus is on God and what He's doing in my life and what He wants me to do, am I being the person that He wants me to be? Then when discouragement comes, it's not going to knock me off of my horse quite as easy.
Yeah.
So those are just some things we can do,
I
think, to face discouragement and to overcome discouragement. And it's not easy, happens to everybody, but, God is way bigger than we are, so trust Him to kind of guide us through it. Our job is just to be faithful and obedient. So. Yeah,
that's really good. Good. When I'm facing discouragement, a lot of times, and I think that's what this is one thing I tell myself is remember your tools. Mm-hmm. Remember the things, and of course the Word of God is even more than a tool. Mm-hmm. It's an actual answer. And what God can change our situations. But I mean, something as silly as walking the dog and being so frustrated at that dog because, she won't do what I'm wanting her to do, mm-hmm. or she's not listening. But then remembering, you have a collar that when you put that collar on her, she listens. Mm-hmm. Use the collar, mm-hmm. So things like it, just knowing that, I'm overwhelmed. Why am I so overwhelmed? I'm discouraged. I can't. What does God say about it? Like using the tools you have is like recognizing it. And of course, like I said, this is the best tool you could ever use is God's Word. But
even simple things like that. I mean, if you feel yourself, getting frustrated, getting discouraged, or, well, what do I need to do? What tools do I need to employ? Do I just need to step back and take a deep breath and, all right, let's put this in perspective, or do I just need to go out and go for a walk? Or just basic, there's nothing spiritual about those things.
Yeah. Well, like you said, a nap.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes that could fix your whole situation if you get the rest that you need in that moment. I mean, that's...
Because sometimes it's not just the discouraging circumstances. Sometimes we just have a bad attitude towards it.
Right.
And sometimes a nap will help. Like I said, if I don't get the sleep I need, I'm less patient. I don't think as clearly. And so sometimes the best thing you do is just take a nap.
I like it. And that, that, like you said, that doesn't fix everything. We have hard stuff in our life that may not ever end, mm-hmm. but it's there. We do have tools we can use. And then we have a really powerful God that can take care of us and provide for us.
Absolutely. So
I love it. All right.
All right.
Anything else on discouragement? We're going to try to be encouraged today, right?
Yes, we're going to be encouraged. Well,
I hope this encouraged you if you're discouraged. But
if you are discouraged, here's a practical tool. Go serve somebody else.
There you go.
Because when you do that, you get your eyes off of yourself and you're using what God has gifted you to serve somebody else. So if you're discouraged, go and encourage somebody else, and that'll help get you on your way.
Perfect. So I love it. All right. Well, thank you, Clint.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for watching today. I hope you learned something about discouragement. Maybe one step. Just take one step to get out of that today. If you need us here at Real Life Church, if you want to talk to a staff member, if you want to see our sermons, go to discoverreallife.net. Everything's there.
All right.
Thank you.
See ya.